Hey everybody, today we're going to be tying one of the classic attractor patterns called the Yellow Humpy. This fly's been around for a while. I mainly use it in the summertime for creeks and for those times where nothing really is hatching. It kind of resembles a mayfly, but almost like a little hexagenia lambada here in Michigan. But without further ado, we'll get started. Today we're going to be tying it in size 14. It can be tied as far down as probably 16 or as large as 8. I've seen it. My interpretation of it, the way I like to tie it, is going to be a little bit different than everybody else's, of course. We'll get started here. I'm going to actually start my thread where I want the yellow hump to end and my hackle to start. So I kind of cut the hook up into thirds. This is the front third, the rear third, or the middle third, and then the rear third. I'm going to start up about the front third there. I'll get that secured, trim out the tag end. And for the tail, I like to use moose body hair. It's super stiff, it's durable, it looks buggy, and the best part is it floats really, really well. So I actually have some in my hair stacker here, my large hair stacker. So all I have to do is pull this clump out and then separate, I like 3 or 4 for this size. So I'll pick some apart here and kind of make sure the tips are aligned somewhat. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's a little too straggly right now. There we go. So I'm going to measure that on the hook shank, and if it's a little longer than the hook shank, that's okay. So I transfer that measurement. I want that measurement right at the bend of the hook, but to help with flotation, to add some bulk, I'm going to actually tie it in right here on top of the hook shank. Moving rearward right there, I'll move it back forward. Let it go. There we have the tail. So these I just lift up, trim cleanly. What some people like to do, and I'm not a fan of it, they actually like to tie the elk or deer hair onto the hook shank, facing rearward, double it back over for the hump, and then try to tie it with the wing. And that works really well if you've done about 1 million of these. I haven't. This is one of the flies that I've always had trouble with. So I'm actually going to use 2 segments of hair. And it's going to be elk hair, but I have this Nature's Spirit early season elk natural. That's going to be for the wing. And then I have this Nature's Spirit early season bleached. This is going to be for the body. So what I'll do is I'll take this bleached hair. I don't want a ton of it, but you need enough to get that nice hump. So I'll trim a little bit out here. Slightly smaller than a pencil. I'm going to clean it, get all the fuzzies out. And then I'm actually going to tie, I'll trim the tips here. I'm actually going to tie the tips in the front, so the butts will be facing back, and then I double it over. And what that does is it builds a taper to the fly that I just think looks better than the other way. So I'll take this here, I'll trim the tips just like that, tie them in, get a nice little elk hair caddis head going on there. And on this, I'm not really reefing down. I just want the thread to coat it with enough tension. Because if you reef it down, that air is going to escape, and you actually want that air in there for flotation purposes. So you see right now, I've tied that elk hair in, and I'm going to pinch with my right hand, get rid of some of that junk with my right. Then I double it back. But before I do that, I forgot to move my thread forward here. So just like that, move the thread forward, then bring the hair forward. And you don't want it surrounding the bottom of the hook. So I just captured the elk hair there. You don't want it surrounding the bottom. You want that thread, that yellow thread, to show through, and you want the hair on either side. If you've tied beetles with this stuff, with black elk hair, pretty much the same thing. You want the belly showing through just like this. So I have 2 wraps around here, 3, 4, pull, and you'll see that hair flare out a bit. Now I need to get that hair out of there. So just a nice trim, flat trim. Don't go digging in there. It'll cut your thread. Everything will be a mess. Now I'm going to run my thread through here and kind of clean that up. So let me trim some butts out. So on the space we have left right here, that's going to be the space for our wing, and you don't have to do anything too fancy with the wing. I'll show you how I do mine. I want to take about the same amount of this darker hair as I used with the bleached hair, kind of just to keep everything the same. Trim it away from the hide. This will be our wing, so once again, spin this, clean it. There's a lot of junk in there. You probably see stuff floating through here, through the air. There's a lot of under fur coming out. Then I put it into my little hair stacker here, give it some taps. And when I tie it in, I want the tips to face the eye. So I take the stacker and I orient it that way. See, the tips are all aligned here. Pull it out with my right hand. Transfer it over. Now I want about a hook shank length sticking up, sticking out of the front. So see my thread right here, the beginning of the hump. I'll take this, one loose wrap, one tighter wrap, one tighter, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to lift this part up, trim it out with my scissors. So you can see right here, we kind of have like a flared head, like a elk hair caddis. I want to lift that up and start damming my hair. And pull, and there we go. So we have one taller piece that made it through, but just kind of smooth this up a bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. But now what I do is I turn it so it's facing me. I take the tips of my scissors and I separate it. About even. But next step is going to help us out immensely. I'm going to take my thread and I'm just going to do figure 8 wraps through this elk hair. That will separate it enough. You don't have to post it up. It's tough to do. Time consuming. So after I ran it through a couple times, I have about even segments here of the yellow thread. You know, you don't want it to look too perfect anyway. I mean, this is, after all, a bug. I don't really think the fish care too much, and I'm going to start cleaning up this area so I can tie my hackle in. I use a combination of grizzly hackle and brown. So I strip some of the grizzly hackle so I can tie it into the stem. Tie that in tight. Then I'll also tie in right above it my brown. I'll strip some of that away. And I'll tie the brown in also. Lift my wings up, and with my thread right behind the eye. Personal preference, I like to tie and start with the grizzly first. So I'll start making some wraps here with the grizzly. Get the brown out of the way. And I try to take 1 or 2 wraps of this before the eye. I don't want to trap my wing. I'm going to have to, though, I think. Let's try that again. Maybe I can keep that propped up with the hackle. Whoops. Capture that with my thread. Now I start with the brown, and I kind of zigzag the brown in and around the grizzly. Capture that. Pull them up together. Okay, now I'll take the tips of my scissors, trim those out. And now I don't want a huge bulky head, but I am going to clean this up a little bit. I'll take some wraps right behind the eye and then whip finish. Go. All right. Trim the thread out and then start to clean up around the eye. Don't be afraid to trap some hackle here. I'll kind of separate my wings a little bit. I'm going to trim that long fiber out. Hopefully the fish won't mind too much. There we go. Because the bushier this fly, the better off we'll be. So there you have it, the yellow humpy. If you like this pattern, feel free to tie a bunch of your own, experiment with colors, red, purple humpies, different colored hackle. For more fly tying videos, visit jnickollflyfishing.com or subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, everybody.